Welcome to the Loft. I'm Bao Phi, Program Director of Events and Awards here at the Loft. The Loft is, yeah. The Loft is one tenant in this beautiful building called Open Book. Open Book is its own nonprofit entity. We share this space, or we are co-tenants in this space with Minnesota Center for the Book Arts and Milkweed. Yeah, also awesome organizations. We're glad to be here. I also want to acknowledge our executive director, Britt Udison is here. Hello, thank you, Britt. Under her leadership, we're gonna be doing some pretty exciting new things this year, including, well, technically next year. It's our fiscal year, never mind. Okay, so, and next year, we're going to be doing this thing called Wordplay, which is like a festival of the book. And so you should definitely check that out. It's going to be nuts. So the Loft offers all types of workshops, classes for all ages, readings like tonight, fellowships and grants, basically anything your heart desires as a writer and a reader. Check out what we do at www.loft.org. If you are a Loft member, thank you. If you're not yet a Loft member, any amount makes you a Loft member, including $1. You don't get benefits till $60 though. I'm just gonna be real with you. That's just the way it rolls. But we couldn't do anything we do without our membership, so thank you. But tonight we're here for the McKnight Arts Fellowships. And I want to acknowledge Program Officer Arlita Little from McKnight Foundation is here with us. The McKnight Foundation is awesome. We've been partnering with them for many years to administer the McKnight Arts Fellowships in writers. So when there's going to be a reception after this downstairs. So when you're eating that wonderful food, make sure you thank Arlita and McKnight Foundation. And the goal of the McKnight Arts Fellowship is to support working artists to create vibrant communities. Minnesota thrives when its artists thrive. The McKnight Foundation invests in the arts and other sectors to support Minnesota's working artists and advocate for the value of their work. Just this year alone, the McKnight Foundation has granted 165 grants and $8.9 million to the arts. No, I said $8.9 million. The McKnight Artist Fellowship encompasses a broad range of different arts disciplines: choreographers, screenwriters, playwriting, dancers, actors. The Loft Literary Center administers the fellowships in writing, but not playwriting. That's the Playwright Center. We handle the poets and other stank writers such as that. The way that we run it is every year the cycle switches. So this year, if you're a Minnesota writer, this year the application is open for writers in creative prose. So creative prose is fiction, nonfiction, memoir, all right? And there's also a children's lit category, and this year it is in middle grade and young adult. All right, so if you're a Minnesota author, you've got till November to apply for $25,000. Yeah, that's a lot of money. It's one of the most wonderful opportunities for writers. A lot of people who aren't from here want to move here because of this. So those of you who are from Minnesota, please check it out. The cycle we have here, we're celebrating here, is poetry, spoken word, and picture books. And I'm just very quickly new this year. We split, usually poetry and spoken word was part of the same category and was judged by one writer. After input from the community and working with Arlita and McKnight, we decided to split spoken word into its own category, much like children's literature, and have spoken word be judged by a spoken word artist, who is with us tonight, Anis Mogjani. And we believe it's the biggest award of its type specifically for spoken word artists in the United States. Spoken word artists can apply for like general arts grants, but we believe this is the first one that has a specific spoken word judge and intentionality behind it. So we're here to celebrate that. And I want to just acknowledge the winners and the honorable mentions who are here tonight. So if you're here, please stand. So first, we're going to do spoken word poetry, judged by Anis Mogjani. The fellow is Donte Collins, who you will be hearing from. And the honorable mentions are Kino Evo, Jeffrey Skemp, April Gibson. April's here. And Tatiana Pioti. We saw her earlier, but I don't think she's here today. The fellows in poetry, judged by Solmaz Sharif. The fellows this year are Hugh Min Win. I got to say a Vietnamese name while announcing the McKnight. Not that I'm playing favorites or anything. For the record, I have no say in the actual judging of the competition. Hugh won fair and square, okay? Chris Santiago. And Lara Mimosa Montes. The honorables are Michael Torres, Juliet Patterson, Sue Huang, and Miriam Carricker, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us tonight, but congratulations. And then the children's lit judge was Matt De La Pena, who could not be here. The way it worked out, he came actually in February. But I believe Yvonne Pearson, who is the fellow in picture books, is here, right? So, congrats, Yvonne. And the honorables picked by Matt De La Pena were Megan Maynor, Peter Pearson, Barbara DaCosta, and Elizabeth Carr. So yes, I strongly encourage you to apply for the McKnight. It's a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful cohort. And thank you all for being here on a Saturday night for poetry. So let's just get into it, right? Yeah, let's just do it. All right, so we're gonna do things a little differently today. We have 3 poets reading, and opening up, since he is the inaugural fellow of the Spoken Word Fellowship, we're gonna have Donte Collins. Donte is a queer Black performance poet whose first poem was written at the age of 7 about feeling trapped and unheard. Named the first Youth Poet Laureate of St. Paul, they are the author of Autopsy and the winner of the 2016 Most Promising Young Poet Award from the Academy of American Poets. They are an alum of True Art Speaks, a nonprofit arts organization based out of the Twin Cities, cultivating literacy, leadership, and social justice through the study and application of hip-hop culture. Please welcome the inaugural Spoken Word McKnight Fellow, Donte Collins.
Hey. Hello. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's such an honor to read at the Loft, honestly. Thank you for having me. Let's see. You caught me in a very experimental time, so I'm excited to share these poems. My family has a very long, specific history with tap dance, and I haven't really written about it until now, so this is like the icebreaker. It's called Rehearsal. The flap is done with the tip of the shoe. The ball tap, the toe, is sudden, soft. Swing the foot forward to brush, then flick, is careful though deliberate, quick, should mimic the keen click of a pin, ta-ta. Would be a ball change if you shift the weight, though this sound requires surgery, an incision in the silence. The ear permitting the ankle's sharp sweep, a release, control, breath, release, she says. My mother, stopping the music to adjust Tamika's arms, Carl's shoulders. Taisha's laces are undone, but doesn't dare look down. My mother, a drill sergeant of sound, hears hesitation, an unsure shuffle, a skimped beat. Again, she shouts, "Don't cheat." Tap is as much about intention as it is integrity. It's as much about the ground as it is about gravity, to be both bird and boulder, to sink then soar in seconds. The body, a decibel bracketing the quiet, the body birthing vibration, aluminum against oak wood, earth grinding earth. And my mother conducting a meticulous stampede. She patterns popping oil, says cadence is clinical, each step sterile, clean, ta-ta, clean, ta-ta, ta-ta. My siblings now sweating in sync, eyes forward, facing the mirrors, the basement air thin with heat. Again, her voice cutting through percussion, rattles with the mirror's return, her tongue, metal in her mouth, the whole house buckling on beat, pulsing through copper pipes. So how could she really expect me to fall asleep? Me, 8 and eager, up past midnight, all thud and twirl and overthinking, rancid with mismatched rhythm and almost meter, my bedroom a cluttered auditorium. I perform for no one. Barefoot, but promised my shoes next summer. Then I can dance downstairs, look and listen. I can make thunder too, I think, while pressing my ear to the floor. Thank you. Thank you. So this poem is, I've been thinking a lot about love and generational love and how we're taught love, and being sure not to mistake love for like egotism or narcissism, you know? And so this is a prayer severing the cycle for Tamika, my sister. My love is as ancient as my blood. And of course, my blood is still mine because a woman, sweetened black with good song, pulled me from the river like an axe pulled back from the bark. I learned love first as scar. And of course, my love is only mine because I found the nerve to say it is. Ha! My love is mine. But was first my mother's. Not the how, but the why. But was first her mother's. Not the how, but the why. Not the how, not the how, not the how, not the how, not the how. I am bored with this beat. I seek a different dance toward death. Lord, listen up, lean in. I crave a love that happens as sweetly as it was named. If love must be swung, let it soften, not split. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations. Yes. Couple quick things. There's an evaluation form in your program. If you could fill that out, that would help us out a lot. And just a couple of things that you might be interested in. We do a lot. I'm not going to tell you everything we do, but a couple of things you might be interested in. Here, November 8th at 7 p.m., we'll have a thing called Big Ideas featuring Daniel Mallory Ortberg. Daniel Mallory Ortberg is Slate's Dear Prudence. He has written for The New Yorker, New York Magazine, the Oprah Magazine, and The Atlantic. He is the co-creator of The Toast, a general interest website geared towards women. Daniel is the author of texts from Jane Eyre and Mary Spinster. That is 7 o'clock, November 8th. That we're super excited for his visit here. And November 14th, we're doing a show called Fairy Tales for Grown-Ups, starring Carter Mayland, Allison Weiss, and Sequoia Nagamatsu, and that will be modern interpretations of Native American and Japanese fairy tales. So please check that out on November 14th. All right, now, you all saw Donte, and the person who had the very good taste to pick Donte as the fellow is Anis Mogjani. Back in the old days, during the National Poetry Slam, if he was slamming, everybody was just like, okay, well, it's a battle for second place. Seriously, everybody knew. You and Patricia Smith were the two that everybody was like, if Patricia or you are slamming, it's over, it's done already. And we are so honored that you are the judge. You actually performed with Patricia, actually at our spoken word series, Equilibrium, and we're glad to have you back. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about him. He's a 2-time National Poetry Slam champion, see? Winner of the International World Cup Poetry Slam, multiple-time TEDx speaker. Anis is the author of 5 books, all published by Right Bloody Publishing: Songs from Under the River, The Feather Room, Over the Anvil We Stretch, The Pocket Knife Bible, and his latest, In the Pockets of Small Gods. Oh, and by the way, Majors and Quinn will be here selling everyone's books downstairs while you're eating, and I'm sure everyone's gonna be willing to sign, so be sure to buy their books. He certainly has enough of you to choose from. We're thrilled to have you back, so please welcome back to the stage Anis Mogjani.
Thank you, Bao. Good evening. How is everyone? Sweet. Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming out. Thank you, Donte. I'm going to share some poems with you guys as soon as I get to this first one. Somewhere between the bodies of the dark house and the flowers that I could smell, I dreamt a pack of dogs. I followed them. They led me through the woods, and we ended up at a campsite that the stars used when down on Earth. The tents were still pitched, but still empty, and no constellations to be seen, like they had left in a hurry or like they would be back shortly. The dogs sniffed at the campfire remains. I dreamt I looked at the sky. It looked like a swept floor. I imagined the giant broom. How empty it sounded. In the dream, I sat on a log. In the dream, the dogs began to howl. In the dream, I scratched a stick through the ashes and then joined in the howling under the sky. How strange that for something to sound empty, it has to make noise inside something else. I felt like we were pouring water down the sink of an abandoned house. A man in a long red cloak walked out of the trees. We stopped howling and watched him. I dreamt he asked to sit with us. Me and the dogs nodded. The man told us he was a writer of operas. He had a practice of writing an opera, then burying it and digging it up a year later. He said he was constantly writing operas and burying them. It seemed like every day a year had passed since one of his operas had been buried, so he was always digging one back up to finish it. He said the time the opera spent away from him, the time they spent in the earth, allowed something to happen. He didn't know if the things that happened were him not remembering the notes fully or the earth actually changing the music he'd composed. He said he felt it didn't really matter which one it was. The music was the music. He said he had heard the water we were pouring out with our bodies, and incidentally, we were in the same place he had buried an opera last year. He asked if we would help him dig it up. I looked at the dogs. The dogs said nothing. I dreamt I took a shovel from the man's outstretched hand and began lifting the ground with it. I looked over at him. He was singing softly as I shoveled. He sounded like the only canary left in the tunnel, and his cloak was red as the blood of the maple tree. I dreamt I unburied the man's opera, that it looked like a small brass box. I dreamt he opened the box to show me what it looked like. Inside were 2 brown birds turning blue. They cleared their throats and started singing. It sounded like walking through woods and hearing a creek not too far off. I sat in the hole I had made, and the man in the red cloak closed his brass box of birds and began filling the hole back up. I dreamt the man said, "You are my opera now." And I said, "Yes." "And you are mine?" And he said, "Yes. When next you unearth me, I will be very different." And I dreamt he covered me with the ground. Sometimes I would go lay in the garden and I would pretend I was a carrot. Sometimes I would curl under the leaves, and I was a head of lettuce. Sometimes I would bury my soft paws in the softer earth, and I was a rabbit. Sometimes in the garden, I was a rock, was sometimes wishing I were 2 rocks, was sometimes becoming 3 rocks, was sometimes held cool and smooth in a palm or warmed by the sun. Sometimes in the garden as a rock, I waited hundreds of years, and nothing but the wind touched me. Sometimes I waited thousands of years, and nothing, not even the wind, could move me. Sometimes in the garden as a rock, night would arrive with a full moon glowing like the skin of an orange-skinned woman in a more orange dress, and the night would use that moon to say to me, look, you are like how I am, and see how bright my body sometimes becomes. Sometimes in the garden, I would wait for spring. Always, I wait for spring. And once, my love returned like it, out of the cold and with flowers on her fingertips. High-five me with your heart. High-thousand me with your hearts. I know you have many of them. We all love many things. I love biscuits. I love little pancakes. I love cheeseburgers. I've loved more than just things that I chew with my mouth. I did love my wife. Sometimes I would chew my wife's shoulder in my mouth. Sometimes my wife, she was annoyed by this. But still, sometimes my wife did love me back. Some things that I've loved will never love me back. Random racist upon the street, while your rhetoric may anger me, I still have love for you, though you probably will not love me back. Walrus, I love you. Though were I to be around you, you would probably gore me with your tusks. Perhaps this is not a good example, as the wild unknowing of wild creatures is not necessarily the same as not loving something back. Perhaps also because I actually do not love the walrus, but simply mention him here because there's a small figurine of a walrus on the coffee table as I write this poem. However, I do love the elephant. However, he too would probably gore me with his tusks. Again, not out of unlove, but perhaps fear. I do not love fear, but I respect him in that he loves me, testing how well I carry the sword of my intent through the land of the midnight farm. The land of the midnight farm, it is a strange and scary place. There are perhaps serial killers and or possums lurking in its darkness. The serial killer may love me, but in no way that I wish to be loved. Their love may involve the removal of my skin and the wearing of it out to the club. The possum may love me, but I do not love the possum. In fact, I hate the possum solely because of how ugly I find the possum to be. And yes, I realize this is a shallow reason to dislike something, so I'm trying, possum. I'm trying to not love you so much. Instead, possibly just be ambivalent to your existence. But oh, I want to hate you like I hate the thought of bee stings, black people, and beans. I put black people in there just to see if you all were paying attention. I fucking love black people. I fucking love white people, though sometimes I find both of them to be trifling. Don't get me wrong. The only mother that I've ever had is black. The only wife that I've ever had is white. But damn, if we humans are a trifling animal at times, but still, I love you. You mountains of trifle and futility, of perseverance and lightness, of incessant rowing towards the sun, even while facing it, wondering why there is no forward momentum. Turn around. Look at my many hands, holding up my many hearts and a many high-five salutation to you, Nina Simone, Paul Newman. So many things in this world I have loved. Rising with the sun, sleeping in late, little pancakes. And even though they didn't turn around once when she got gone, my wife's shoulders. I can see it like it was a film, with the January sun of Texas smiling down on my skin and Burnett Road, having just finished eating tacos alone and just 6 blocks from the house we had moved into together back in October 3 years before, the little shitty one that was dark but where the light in the bedroom at the back would enter in so lovingly, and where I'd set the kitchen on fire just before Christmas, where we first brought Trudy home, and where we would take her for walks together at dawn, at dusk, and would often stroll down the street to the same taco spot I was just now leaving, when after 6 months of wishing I were dead, and only 15 miles from Lake Travis, where Jeff chose to drown now 9 years past, from out of my dark, steeping heart the language changed. Instead, I want to kill myself, bubbled up to my damp brain for the first time, but not the last, as I crossed the street and sipped through my straw-cold black cherry soda and unlocked the car door, windshield gleaming the same way I'm sure the lake had when he left, with August dancing its light across the top of the water like a blade traveling slowly in the dream, or a quiet ghost leaving its sheet, and I lingered with the door open before the click of the closing on my arm, the winter sun so warm. They never found you, your body. And I ask, closeness that was you, what rattled inside the flower your chest held so tightly? What shook it so terribly? And again, what rattled, what shook? And again, the rattling, and again, what shook? And again, and again, and again. It never stops. And again, I ask, again, was I supposed to follow, like Anne to Sylvia, you to where you went and bring you back? Bring your body back. How am I still supposed to? How do I follow? To where? Did your body, Jeffrey, how could you not hear the size of the planet? I whispered into your heart. I was so much louder then. Once I lost my brother. And it seems sometimes still I am still losing my brother still. Every week, every hour again. And Lord, your sunlight is so blinding today. Everything unseen in me. Nobody knows, and nobody can see it. How do I possibly speak to any of it? So, the first poem I shared is from my book that came out a few years ago called The Pocket Knife Bible, and other poems that I'm sharing are from this new book of mine called In the Pockets of Small Gods. And even though it's, I don't know, some heavy stuff that it deals with, which is the suicide of my friend now 12 years ago, and the collapse of a pretty abusive marriage. I don't look at it as a sad book. If there's something that the past few years have shared with me is how unadept our culture is for looking at grief and dealing with it, and we want it to be like a room that you can just walk out of and turn the light switch off, but really it's like your back is always scarred up, or it's like I guess it's like a BB under your skin, and it's always kind of there. And some days when like the rain's on the distance, your knee aches a little, and so like learning to kind of like walk with it and deal with it in that regards. And so I'd like to imagine that this book isn't necessarily a racked book of sadness. Hopefully that's the case. But yeah, I'm going to read a couple more poems, and then we get to hear Solmaz Sharif read, which I'm really excited about. I was a tree of figs, a bushel of dates, picked, plucked, and dipped in honey and rolled in oats. I waited days into months for something outside my body to pluck the edible parts of me from the parts of me that grow them. My bodies grew plump, soaking up the sun, making my thick skin under the afternoon light brown into amber, into gold, and almost translucent. In the warm hands of the setting sun, the snakes moved below me. The squirrels sought to eat me, and they tore my flesh open. The seeds they couldn't fit in their cheeks, they threw to the dirt. The snakes crawled above me. I clung to the underside of their bellies, praying that in the absence of wind that might have carried me to the soft soil of the far fields, that the slither of their leather might instead crawl me there with them. Do not let them tell you what in you should grow and what in you should kill. They did not spend years held by hands under the dirt for the purpose of dark gardening. Some were there as it happened. Some of them watched. And when you halfway climbed, were halfway torn from out of the earth and went to bathe the dirty from your arms and back, only to find the dirt was actually holes, actual pieces of your body, now actually gone, some of them wondered why you could not just clean yourself. There's strawberries upon the underside of the bed growing, you scratched so hard at, and through the softness you rest upon, to pull their soft, small bodies out from the cracks. For you too were once a small body, falling upwards from others, had too once a grandmother, and how so very much she loved you, peeling oranges and grapes, just to watch your very small mouth chew. Anise, may your heart, like the moon, grow big and full, and in this absence of light, new. So I have two more, one little one and then a little longer. This first poem, there's the first poem I ever wrote that was a love poem was written, 23 years ago. And the person that I wrote it for way back when, this friend of mine, she had posted like a photograph on her Facebook now, I guess like a few years back, and it was a photograph of a lemon tree in a pot sitting on her kitchen windowsill, and had this caption that read, "See the lemon tree I grew from a seed, how big you've gotten." And I thought first, what a sweet sentiment, and then my second thought was, what a stupid sentiment. And as I find like most things in life are, that they hold both sides of that spectrum. And so then I wrote a poem. Oh, lemon tree, I grew from a seed. How big you have gotten. You were so little when you were a seed. And now so big. And soon you will carry such round and lovely lemons, yellow and dimpled. When they grow too big for your thin branches and they leave this kitchen of mine, ask them not to forget it, this kitchen of ours. It is my favorite room in the house. And lemon tree, when you pick up to follow, please do think of me. I will think of you. Here, when my hands are far too empty and my tongue is far too sweet, I will think of the quiet poem of your shape. Lemon tree. Please, bring a scarf with you. Wherever you end up, it may be cold. And if it isn't, perhaps you'll one day travel someplace where it is. When you're in your coffin, clanging down the river with all the other coffins in the water of the next world, all of them bumping and jostling against one another, the contents thrown about like riding inside of a small plane, you'll peek your head up to see what the racket is. You'll see the other coffins. Looking around, you'll see nothing but coffins and river and two banks distantly flanking the river, and the biggest, tallest dark stretching overhead. So dark it feels like this place, big as it is, must be inside some sort of bigger place. But there's still stars, though. Wherever this river is, you still see stars. And while looking around, you'll see that there are other heads peeking out of their coffins. You yell across the dark, asking, "You know where we are?" And someone will answer back, "Nope." You? Nope, you answer back. You ask someone else, "What about you?" "No. I wonder where this is." And someone else will say, I don't know, but it's big. And someone else, yeah, so big it's vast. And then depending on what part of the river you're on, someone else may then say, yeah, vast like the backside of Sean Brown. And even though no one on the river knows who Sean Brown is, everyone on the river will laugh. The chuckles will subside until a quiet sets in over the laughter, a quiet like you sat down in somebody else's church. And someone will then ask someone else, where are you from? And they will say, Texas. What about you? Boston. Boston? Yeah, Boston. I know someone from Boston. Kate Lee. You know her? No. What about Stephen Ellis? I'm actually in Somerville. Somerville? Yes, Somerville. And someone else will then yell out, Somerville? I know someone in Somerville. Who? Nick Cathcart. You know him? I do know him. Yeah? Yeah. Oh man, small world. Yeah, Nicky's a great guy. He is. I hadn't seen him in 5-10 years, and when I did, he had a first edition of an E.E. Cummings book to give to me. Great guy. And the first person probably won't know who E.E. Cummings is, but will still agree that yes, Nicky is a great guy. And then it will get quiet again until someone else asks, where is it that we are? And no one will answer. A few people shrug. All of you will look into the stars that are collecting in the distance above. You'll try to think of someone you might know that lives in Somerville or Texas or Florida or France, just to have something to talk about with a person you never met before just right now. Just to share something in the dark quiet, even though all of you are already sharing the river and the sound of the current bumping all of you into one another. And you wonder where the water is taking you and how long it will be before it brings you there. And what there will be like. If it'll be like here, on the river, with all of us sitting in our boxes, trying to split the dark by sharing our voice with others. If it'll be like how it was in the world before this one. Thank you very much.
One more time for Anis Mogjani. Yeah, I feel like poetry, all of poetry in the United States anyway, is really the band that we all know is cool if we know it's cool before everybody else knows it's cool. That's all of poetry though, like nobody else knows, it's just us. And I think every time I listen to Anis, that's what I think of. It's like, it feels special. So thank you for being here. Yeah. Also, I should let you know that this is being filmed and photographed thanks to Browntown for filming and Anna Min for taking photos. And also thanks to Marian Gomez, the Loft's events manager, for helping set up and all of this. We have one more poet for tonight. She was the judge for poetry this year. Born in Istanbul to Iranian parents, Solmaz Sharif's work has appeared in The New Republic, Poetry, The Kenyan Review, Jubilat, Gulf Coast, Boston Review, Witness, and others. She is currently a lecturer at Stanford University. Her first poetry collection, Look, published by Grey Wolf Press in 2016, was a finalist for the National Book Award. And for those of you who have not read Look yet, I highly recommend it. It is a book that once you open it and read it, the world is a different place with this book in it, in a better place. The book is a gift. So definitely check out Look. So please welcome to the stage, Solmaz Sharif.
Good evening, Minneapolis. I was going to ask how everyone's doing, but it seems like everyone's doing well. Yes? Okay, good. It's such a joy and an honor to be here Big congrats to all the winners of the McKnight Fellowship. Big congrats to the honorable mentions. And honestly, big congrats to everyone who applied, because this applicant pool was just staggering. So I don't know what's happening in Minnesota as a state, but I was very happy to behold it. I am feeling very bitter today. I am feeling very bitter today. I think what I will do is I will just read, actually. And I think what I am thinking about in the poem, in many of the poems in this book and the poems that I'm working on, are my own relationship to a nation, and this nation in particular. So I'll just read through. Mess hall. Your knives tip down in the dish rack of the replica plantation home. You wash hands with soaps pressed into seahorses and scallop shells, white to match your guest towels. And, like an escargot fork, America, you have found the dimensions small enough to break a man. A wet rag, a bullet like a bishop or an armless knight of the Ku Klux Klan. Their silhouette through your nighttime window, a quartet plays a song you admire. Outside, a ring of concertina wire circles around a small collapse. America, ignore the window and look at your lap. Even your dinner napkins are on fire. Deception story. Friends describe my disposition as stoic. Like a dead fish, an ex said. Distance is a funny drug and used to make me a distressed person, one who cried in bedrooms in airports. Once, I bawled so hard at the border, even the man with the stamps and holster said, "Don't cry, you'll be home soon." My distribution over the globe debated and set to quota. A nation can only handle so many of me. Ditching class, I break into my friend's dad's mansion and swim in the Beverly Hills pool in a borrowed t-shirt. A brief diversion. My body breaking the chlorinated surface makes it momentarily my house. My division of driveway gate and alarm codes, my dress-rehearsed doctrine of pool boys and ping pong and water delivered on the backs of sequined sparklets trucks. Over here, Dolly, an agent will call out, then pat the hair at your hot black dome. After explaining what she will touch, backs of the hands, at the breasts and buttocks. The hand goes inside my waistband and my heart goes dormant, a dead fish, the last female assist I decided to hit on. My life in the American dream is a downgrade, a mere draft of home. Correction, it satisfies as drag. It is snarling what I carve of it alone. Expellee. Chest films taken at the clinic. The doctor's softly splintered popsicle stick. By 5, I knew I was a health threat. The day-long waits, the pre-dawn lines, stale taste of toothpaste and skipped breakfast, the no and next metronome of INS. Numbered windows, numbered tongues hanging out of red dispensers you pull at the butcher shop. The ground meat left out for strays, the sewing needles planted in it. Inspiration Point, Berkeley. I was asked to write a nature poem. Consider Kissinger, The honorary globe-trotter of Harlem who spins on fingertip the world as balloon, the buffoon erected and beplaqued here by the Rotary Club as evergreen, and in this peace grove planted alongside Waldheim and Nixon, Bush, Herbert Walker, and Mother Teresa, one Pope, one Dalai Lama, one Dr. King. Kissinger, who was the one the bunnies in Hughes' mansion voted MILF and is named here in our great tradition of naming, as on the Anza expedition, the conquistadors dropped armored mission after saints, Luis Obispo, Francisco, etc., up this western coast, my lover and myself now by cleared path regard, hardly touching each other or the invasive grasses the conquistadors also brought, perhaps by boot sole, perhaps by taste, as we like to do, to tote and plant and raise a home we can recognize, even when we want anew. We two invaders who love to recognize each other by shoulder stoop, by tone behind closed door, or down beyond the trail bend. And so the grasses are Mediterranean, as were the Spanish in what was before their former windows, as is Vista Point, which is where we are asked to stand to see before us land unnamed, and imagine ourselves, we twin atoms, as the didactics at the trailhead suggest, witnessing the native flora that before eucalyptus and other pacification flourished here. Didactics that provide a painted rendition of the lands wild-flowered and alive before the Spanish came and we came behind them, and there is not a one in the painting, not a bowl or blanket, not a toe or term of endearment, not a mother, not a swimmer in the painted pre-Spanish San Pablo Creek, though there are realistically rendered salmon. There is nothing that has nothing to do with this. Oh, I know. Desired appreciation. The Latin poet Ovid was exiled, and in his exile, he wrote a series of pathetic poems, pleading for his way back home. In the middle of that, he also wrote a long curse poem, cursing the emperor, and it's called Ibis. And so the first two lines of this poem are lifted from the first two lines of his curse poem, or a translation of it, I should say. Desired appreciation. Until now that I've reached my 30s, all my muse's poetry has been harmless, American and diplomatic. A learned helplessness is what psychologists call it, my docile desired state. I've been largely well-behaved and gracious. I've learned the doctors learned of learned helplessness by shocking dogs. Eventually, we things give up. Am I grateful to be here? Someone eventually asks if I love this country. In between the helplessness, the agents, the nation must administer a bit of hope, must meet basic dietary needs, ensure by tube, by nose, by throat, by other orifice, must fist bump a janitor, must muss up some kid's hair and let him loose around the Oval Office. Click, click could be cameras or the teeth of handcuffs closing to fix the arms overhead. There must be a doctor on hand to ensure the shoulders do not dislocate, and there must be Prince's raspberry beret. Click, click could be Morse code tapped out against a coffin wall to the neighboring coffin. Outside my window, the snow lights cobalt for a bit at dusk, and I'm surprised every second of it. I had never seen the country like this. Somehow I can't say yes. This is a beautiful country. I have not cast my eyes over it before, that is, in this direction, is how John Brown put it when he looked out from the scaffold. I feel like I must muzzle myself, I told my psychiatrist. So you feel dangerous, she said. Yes. So you feel like a threat? Yes. Why was I so surprised to hear it? I'm obsessed with the language of power. This book deals with the Department of Defense, which has its own dictionary. I've been doing a deep dive into the self-improvement industry and cognitive behavioral therapy and all these modes that ask us basically to change the language that we use to describe the world around us in order to make the world around us a more tolerable place and in order to make us more pleasant subjects of this place, right? And so this poem, the first two sentences are lifted from studies that were, it's kind of like, I think maybe I found them in business journals or something, but there's studies that are like negotiation tactics of like, if you want this thing done, try wording it this way rather than this way, just to give you a sense. So it's called social skills training. Studies suggest, "How may I help you, officer?" is the single most disarming thing to say, and not "What's the problem?" Studies suggest it's best the help reply, "My pleasure," and not "No problem." Studies suggest it's best not to mention problem in front of power, even to say there is none. Gloria Steinem says women lose power as they age, and yet the loudest voice in my head is my mother. Studies show the mother we have in mind isn't the mother that exists. Mine says, "What the fuck are you crying for?" Studies show the baby monkey will pick the fake monkey with fake fur over the furless wire monkey with milk without contest. Studies show to negate a thing is to think it anyway. I'm not sad. I'm not sad. Studies recommend regular expressions of gratitude and internal check-ins. Studies define assertiveness as self-respect cut with deference. Enough, the wire mother says. History is a kind of study. History says we forgave the executioner. Before we mopped the blood, we asked, "Lord Judge, have I executed well?" Studies suggest yes. "What the fuck are you crying for, officer?" the wire mother teaches me to say. While studies suggest, Solmaz, have you thanked your executioner today? The master's house. To wave from the porch, to let go of the grudge, to disrobe, to recall Ethel Rosenberg's green polka-dotted dress, to call your father and say, "I'd forgotten how nice everyone in these red states can be," to hear him say, "Yes, as long as you don't move in next door," to recall every drawn curtain in the apartments you have lived, to find yourself at 33 at a vast expanse with nary a papyrus of guidance, with nary a voice, a muse, a model, to finally admit out loud, then I want to go home. To have a dinner party of intellectuals with a belle long-armed, lightly tongued at each setting, to sport your dun gown, to revel in face serums, to be a well-calibrated burn victim, to fight the signs of aging, to assure financial health, to be lavender sachets and cedar lining, and all the ways the rich might hide their rot. To eye the master's bone china, to pour diuretic in his coffee and think this erosive to the state. To disrobe when the agent asks you to find a spot on any wall to stare into, to develop the ability to leave an entire nation thusly, just by staring at a spot on the wall as the lead-vested agent names article by article what to remove, to do this in order to do the other thing, the wild thing, to say this is my filmdom, the master's house, and I gaze upon it, and it is good, to discuss desalinization plants and de terroir, to date briefly a banker, a lapsed Marxist, and hear him on the phone speaking in billions of dollars, its residue over the clear bulbs of his eyes as he turns to look upon your nudity, to fantasize publishing a poem in the New Yorker eviscerating his little need, to set a bell at each intellectual's table setting, ringing idea after idea, and be the simple-footed help, rushing to say, yes, to disrobe when the agent asks you to find a spot on any wall to stare into, to develop the ability to leave an entire nation thusly just by staring at a spot on the wall, to say, this is my filmdom, the master's house, to recall the settler who from behind his mobile phone said, I'm filming you for God, to recall this sad God, God of the mobile phone camera, God of the small black globe and pixelated eye above the blackjack table at Harrah's and the metal tooth pit at Calendia checkpoint the same. To recall the Texan that held the shotgun to your father's chest, sending him falling backward, pleading, and the words come to him in Farsi. To be jealous of this, his most desperate language, to lament the fact of your lamentations in English, English being your first defeat. To finally admit out loud, then, I want to go home. To know, for example, in Farsi, the present perfect is called the relational past, and is used at times to describe a historic event whose effect is still relevant today, transcending the past. To say, for example, Shah diktator bude ast, translates to the Shah was a dictator, but more literally, the Shah was a dictator. To have a tense of was, the residue of it over the clear bulb of your eyes, to walk cemetery after cemetery in these states and nary a gravestone reading Solmaz, to know no nation will be home until one does, to do this in order to do the other thing, the wild thing, though you've forgotten what it was. I think I'll read this title poem as a closer. Yeah. The Department of Defense has redefined the word look to mean in mine warfare a period during which a mine circuit is receptive of an influence. The influence being the person who steps on the mine. Look. It matters what you call a thing. Exquisite, a lover called me, exquisite. Whereas, well, if I were from your culture living in this country, said the man outside the 2004 Republican National Convention, I would put up with that for this country. Whereas I felt the need to clarify, you would put up with torture, you mean, and he proclaimed, yes. Whereas, what is your life? Whereas years after they looked down from their jets and declared my mother's Abadan block probably destroyed, we walked by the villas, the faces of buildings torn off into dioramas, and recorded it on a handheld camcorder. Whereas it could take as long as 16 seconds between the trigger pulled in Las Vegas and the Hellfire missile landing in Mogjani Sharif, after which they will ask, did we hit a child? No, a dog, they will answer themselves. Whereas the federal judge at the sentencing hearing said, I want to make sure I pronounce the defendant's name correctly. Whereas this lover would pronounce my name and call me exquisite and lay the floor lamp across the floor, softening even the light. Whereas the lover made my heat rise so that if heat sensors were trained on me, they could read my thermal shadow through the roof and through the wardrobe. Whereas it's not like walking to the grocery store and seeing a dead body here. It's not like that. It's Iraq, it's Iraq. It's kind of like acceptable to see that there and not. It was kind of like seeing a dead dog or a dead cat lying. Whereas I thought if he would look at my exquisite face or my father's, he would reconsider. Whereas, you mean I should be disappeared because of my family name? And he answered, yes, that's exactly what I mean, adding that his wife helped draft the Patriot Act. Whereas the federal judge wanted to be sure he was pronouncing the defendant's name correctly and said he had read all the exhibits, which included the letter I wrote to cast the defendant in a loving light. Whereas today we celebrate things like his transfer to a detention center closer to home. Whereas his son has moved across the country, whereas I made nothing happen, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a thermal shadow. It appears so little and then vanishes from the screen. Whereas I cannot control my own heat, and it can take as long as 16 seconds between the trigger, the Hellfire missile, and a dog, they will answer themselves, whereas a dog, they will say. Now, therefore, let it matter what we call a thing. Let it be the exquisite face for at least 16 seconds. Let me look at you. Let me look at you in a light that takes years to get here. Thank you.
Wow. One more time for Solmaz Sharif, please. I'm speechless. I got nothing. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the McKnight Foundation. Congratulations to all of the fellows and all the honorables. Like Solmaz said, the level of talent in this community is astronomical, which can kind of mean sometimes you're like, damn, am I ever gonna get this McKnight? But you will. You gotta keep applying, all right? Thank you again. Have a good night. Don't leave yet, though. Just go downstairs. There's food and stuff, and it's free. And there are books and beverages and community. So please join us downstairs, and thank you so much for coming tonight.